I will share.
Okay. Is that Captain Olobenia? Okay, yes, Prof. Let's give him a chance to say something.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
Captain, unmute yourself and say something. But if he's going to waste our time.
Good morning, all. Just to say that I'm glad to be there here with you.
Oh, all right, Captain. Thank you very much, Prof. I think you can go ahead. Captain is
Okay.
you're one of our master mariners. Yes.
Yes. So share screen.
Okay.
Says I'm screen sharing. I can't. Can you see that?
No, Prof. Yeah, we can see that now.
Okay. And I will go from beginning of slideshow. Okay. Well, thank you very much indeed. Can you hear me okay, Edmund?
Yes, we can hear you, Prof.
Great. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. And I'm absolutely delighted to come back and have another go at presenting. I think this is a really important initiative, and I'm greatly honoured, actually, that Edmund, Dr. Chilaka, asked me to say a little bit. As I said last time, I will concentrate on some comparisons with Southeast Asia. And if I go to my next slide, there's a very good reason for that, because actually the expert on the development of national shipping lines in West Africa, in Nigeria and Ghana, of course, is actually sitting in is the host chair of this session. And there's a lovely picture there that I found on the World Wide Web of the launch of Dr. Chilaka's excellent book, The Rise, Fall and Liquidation of Africa's Pioneer Carriers, Nigerian National Shipping Line and Black Star Line. I want to direct you to that as the expert on West Africa. So I thought I'd say a little bit about some comparisons with part of the world that I know a bit better, which is Southeast Asia, with Malaysia and Singapore. Although a little later than the establishment of the Black Star Line, which was 1957, and Nigerian National Shipping Line in the early 1960s, Malaysia and Singapore, similarly to Ghana and Nigeria, established their own national shipping companies in 1968. This was all a bit complicated because, as you may know, for 2 difficult years, between 1963 and 1965, Malaysia and Singapore were actually part of the same country. In 1965, for whatever reasons, Singapore chose to leave the Malaysian Federation. And after that, in 1968, both separate countries decided to establish their own shipping lines. And so there we have the logo, the current logo for the Malaysian International Shipping Corporation, formed in 1968. And very soon after, almost immediately, in 1968, we have the formation of Neptune Orient Lines Limited, which was the Singapore national carrier. The Singapore line was basically government owned, or 100% government owned. Malaysian International Shipping Corporation, reflecting, I suppose, slightly different political economy in Malaysia, was partly government owned, but also had a large input of private capital from both Malaysia and also a little bit from Hong Kong as well. I'll maybe say a little bit more about that. So it was kind of a public-private partnership which is quite typical of Malaysia's political economy at that period. Now, of course, everybody wanted national shipping lines, and in fact, in many senses, Malaysia and Singapore were a bit late to the party. And one could argue, of course, that this is, you know, a natural identifier of the newly independent nation. It accompanied decolonization. So countries throughout the global south, as they were becoming politically independent, wanted also to show their economic independence to a certain extent, but also, I suppose, just as badges of national identity. And Michael Billig, of course, calls these sort of badges, if you like, of national identity, everyday evidence of the nation, if you like, as a banal nationalism. So perhaps the, you know, national shipping lines were a bit like, you know, the new postage stamps, the new currency, where getting rid of the Queen's head, of course, was a very important part of the story to show your nationhood. And what's interesting also, I think, about linking my interest in both postage stamps and shipping is that many newly independent countries actually, with their newly independent stamps, with their new national stamps, also celebrated national shipping lines on them. So Ghana in 1957 actually had a set of stamps commemorating the inauguration of the Black Star Line in 1957. Singapore, I think this is 1969, issued a set of stamps celebrating the formation of Neptune Orient lines. And then again, 10 years later, Singapore issued another commemorative set to mark the 10th anniversary of Neptune Orient lines. As I said last time, I did do a search, but I couldn't find Nigeria having actually had a set of stamps marking the inauguration of the national line. But certainly in 1986, in a set of stamps about Nigerian national life or everyday life, there's an image here of the docks. And I'd said this last time as well, I don't know if that's Nigerian national lines shipping colours, but at least a recognition, if you like, of, you know, the importance of ports, the importance of shipping to national identity. Okay, so, you know, this is about, it's cultural, psychological, if you like, importance of having national lines. But there are also solid material reasons, you could argue, which were advanced at the time and perhaps have become even more relevant today, that influenced Southeast Asia as much as West Africa in wanting to develop national shipping. And I know that's very pertinent to our discussion about the current day. There were believed to be material benefits involved. And primarily, really, was the issue, particularly in the 1960s, but you could argue even more so in the 1980s, when terms of trade in Southeast Asia, at least, tend to decline. The whole question of foreign exchange and the balance of trade. And I did notice, you know, this is an important part of considering the 2075 agenda in Nigeria. So in other words, stemming the flow of invisible earnings out of the country, better able to capture hard currency earnings as well through national institutions. The other thinking was that by developing national shipping lines and becoming part of established conferences in Southeast Asia, the most powerful conference was the Far East Freight Conference, which dominated trade between the UK and Europe and Southeast Asia, and was dominated by, as you'd expect, British shipping lines. It was felt that having a national shipping line and joining the conference rather than staying outside it would allow greater influence, greater control, and greater leverage over freight rates, which were considered to be often very high and very exploitative. And also, of course, this links obviously to the question of foreign exchange, balance of trade as well. And this would give greater, this would allow for a higher degree of competitiveness on the part of Southeast Asian commodities. The other argument advanced often was that of employment, that a national shipping line would naturally give employment opportunities to nationals and training opportunities for people from Malaysia, people from Singapore. And in the case of Malaysia, this is particularly important because of the levelling up agenda, whereby so-called indigenous population, the Bumiputra, the sons of the soil, were to be given special privileges to try and overcome imbalances, economic imbalances, which were very much a legacy of colonial rule between Malays, for example, in West Malaysia, and Chinese and Indian Malaysians. It was also felt that ship owning would have multiplier effects in terms of heavy industrialization. And in the case of Southeast Asia, this is particularly important because of nearby Japan and Japan's increasing influence over Southeast Asia, and the example really of how shipbuilding in post-war Japan had been a major factor in reigniting Japan's heavy industrialization. I think it's quite interesting here that in that set of stamps from 1969 for Singapore, that ship repairing, shipbuilding is emphasized there as a key new element, if you like, in the post-independence Singapore state. And there's a marvelous interview with this guy, Hong Kong ship owner Frank Tsao, who was interviewed for an oral history project in Singapore. You can find that online, where he talks a lot about how Malaysian cabinet ministers persuaded him to get involved in developing the Malaysian International Shipping Corporation, largely because of what they'd learned from the Japanese experience of ship owning, shipbuilding, having multiplier effects upon heavy industrialization. Linked also, I suppose, to getting better leverage in the global economy over freight rates, but also where you trade. It was also felt that national shipping lines, and again we go back to the issue of the conferences, which sometimes had actually excluded or had provided very limited services to certain parts of the world. It was felt that trade diversification would also be helped by having national lines. I mean, that's both technological in terms of obviously Singapore very quickly moves into containers and bulkers, for example, which in the late 60s, early 1970s, of course, are becoming technologically dominant over the old general cargo boats. But also there's a really marvelous article about Sri Lanka and the setting up of the National Shipping Line by Dami in the International Journal of Maritime History from 1989, which emphasizes the benefits of the National Shipping Line in terms of trade diversification geographically, and which was an important argument also in the case of Singapore and Malaysia. Another issue, of course, as well, which wasn't really economic, but was more about national defense, was the issue of national security. Now, we could argue till the cows come home about whether this was a good or a bad thing, but this kind of followed the example of the UK, where the merchant marine in the UK had evolved and developed as a sort of imperial reserve. in times of emergency, in times of global warfare, particularly, the merchant marine had essentially become an arm of the military navy, if you like. And so there is an argument also that in a time of emergency, in a time of war, having your own merchant marine would be advantageous as well. And that moves me to my next discussion about economic independence. Because of those material benefits, and also because of the importance to Malaysia and Singapore of national shipping in defining an economic independence, I think it's very interesting how both of them decided actually to reject a partnership with the UK lines, with the lines which had traditionally dominated their trade, and the Far East Freight Conference particularly, and many of the other conferences actually in Southeast Asia, continued to be dominated by UK lines. So although Malaysia and Singapore joined the conferences, despite some grumblings, particularly in Singapore, they didn't want to lose their economic independence by going into partnership in setting up national lines with the UK lines like Blue Funnel, P&O, etc., etc. I think it's quite interesting as well that Ghana, of course, rejected an alliance with Elder Dempster and instead chose Zim, of course, for its early development or for managerial and consultancy in the setting up of its early line. And although Nigeria did go into partnership in the short term with the British lines, after 1961, Elder Dempster and Palm were actually bought out. And also the Elder Dempster and Palm line agencies were indigenized in the 1970s as well. And a similar pattern follows in Malaysia, for example, in the 1970s, when there's increased indigenization of British trading companies, British shipping agencies, those sorts of things. Now, you could argue, of course, and in fact, there was a really great question last time about, well, what actually happened, and that there was a lot of disappointment, of course, as we all know, about the success or lack of success by national shipping lines. In 1983, Malaysia's probably most famous and most outspoken Prime Minister, Mahathir Mohamad, continued to complain of global economic imbalances. And amongst that, of course, he was particularly upset by what he saw as Western obstructionism of UNCTAD's liner code, the 40-40-20 split, in which UNCTAD expected that 40% of trade, let's say between Malaysia and the UK, 40% would be carried in Malaysian vessels, 40% in UK vessels, and then 20% by so-called cross traders, Norwegians, for example, Japanese companies in that trade as well. But often it proved very, very difficult to get to that 40%, and Mahathir was really complaining about obstructionism actually on the part of Western governments and shipping companies to that reapportioning, if you like, rebalancing of global trade. However, you could argue that there are some success areas, and while the Malaysian International Shipping Corporation was never able to handle a large proportion of Malaysia's overseas trade, linked to Petronas, the national oil company, MISC, M-I-S-C, Malaysian International Shipping Corporation, actually by the early 21st century controlled one of the world's largest tanker fleets. And I'm sure you're aware of Petronas because they're very good at advertising themselves, of course, via Formula One. And the Neptune Orient line, Singapore's national line, was actually in the early 21st century within the top 10 liner shipping groups worldwide. So you will probably say to me, and I don't really know the answer to this question, so perhaps we need to do a bit more research into this, but why then on earth, would you say, did Singapore sell out to CMA CGM, sometimes known as the French line, in 2016? So something to consider, perhaps. I will just come to some final thoughts, therefore. Thank you for listening. But going back to those arguments in the 1960s about the establishment of national shipping lines at the time of decolonization, perhaps it is time to reconsider the material benefits in a less secure global environment, which we seem to be entering into, unfortunately, at the moment. Although I did appreciate last time the presentation which followed mine, in which, of course, there are huge problems and issues to surmount in, returning to protectionism or returning to some form of national shipping. But I do worry because not just for West Africa, but I do worry for the UK as well, which I also feel is rather vulnerable in the fact that it hardly controls, or that there are hardly any British-owned shipping companies, and much of Britain's overseas trade is dependent upon foreign supply in terms of the vessels. And just to finish off with a bit of blatant advertising, if you'd like to hear a little bit more about the formation of the Malaysian and Singapore lines, I did a talk back in March on the decolonization of Malaysia and Singapore, a maritime perspective. You can find that on YouTube from the Royal Asiatic Society. And then if you are interested in reading a bit more about the post-war era, shipping and globalization, this is a book which I edited with my fabulous esteemed colleagues, Niels Peterson and Stig Tenold, on shipping and globalization in the post-war era. So I shall finish there. I shall stop sharing.
Yes, yes, Prof. Thank you very much. Yes, you have stopped sharing, Prof.
Great, thank you. Brilliant.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. A very interesting lecture, as always. What I will do right now is there may be a few reactions before we go into the next presentation. There may be a few reactions. So we'll take just about one or two comments or questions quickly before we call the next person. Is there anybody who wants to make a comment or a question to Prof. Nick White before we go to the next presenter? And if there is none, I think what we'll do now is to call on, is Captain around? Captain Sunday Umoren, are you here? Is Captain around? Is Captain Sunday Umoren around?
Yes,
yes,
I can see him.
Captain, all right. So Captain, what I would think is maybe we'll combine the question for Professor Nick White with yours after your presentation. So I think let's have Captain Sunday Umoren now share his screen and make his presentation. Captain, please, you're welcome.
Can you see my screen now?
Not yet. We can't, not yet. Okay. Yes, we can see your screen now.
Okay. Can you confirm we are on the cover page? Prof, is it the cover page that is being shown now?
Yes, yeah, I can see that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. And thank you very much for all that are joining us today. It's a great pleasure to be part of this forum, especially noting the fact that Nigeria is trying to get the best out of blue economy. Forum like this shouldn't be taken for granted. So today, as highlighted, I'll be presenting on the strategic repositioning of Nigeria as a top quartile supplier of seafarer. I will start with asking a rhetorical question, which is something like, can you achieve that chunk of the pie, as in being a major exporter seafarer, without having a booming local shipping? If the local shipping is not booming, can you actually come up to get into that top quartile or even mid quartile? Along the way, we'll come close to answering that question. If you look at seafaring is banded into two sectors. The theoretical part that's being done in the classroom, the traditional classroom, and then the practical side, the on-the-job experience aspect, which is what we call sea training, the practical sea training session. You can't zoom in on one, you can't succeed in one aspect and come up with proficient and quality seafarers. For you to have quality seafarers, you must excel at both aspects, the theoretical aspect and then the practical aspect. Recall what every cadet is given at the end of when you succeeded in your final exam is called certificate of competency. For the lower one, certificate of proficiency. So you must be proficient, you must be competent. It's not a degree, it's not a BSc thing that have a BSc and I can go and work. You must be proficient. It means you must actually be able to demonstrate that that thing you are holding, you actually deserve it. Okay, so let's go to the introductory part. One of the reasons we are looking at this is that Nigeria is geographically blessed, located at a strategic location. It has wide coastline spanning about 850 kilometers. Currently, maritime sector contributes nearly 3% to our GDP. We have a population. 60% of our population fall under the age of 25. That is the potential. We'll talk more about more other potentials we have. It's not just enough having potential, opportunities out there. What are the opportunities that we want to jump into, you want to latch onto? Global shipping demand is rising about 2% annually, and it's predicted to go that way up to 2030. There's booming trade in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, capturing about 5% of demand. If you capture 5% of that demand, we're looking at about $3 million. And Nigeria is a top manufacturing country, blessed with offshore activities, a lot of offshore activities, oil in general. Most oil producing countries have viable shipping lines. So this strategy, whatever strategy we should come up with, should align with the Blue Economy Agenda and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement for liberalization, positioning of maritime talent as a good driver for the regional hub. So why are we making so much noise about this seafaring, and maritime blue economy? It's about what we can actually get from it. Seafarers' remittances accounted for approximately 2.65% of Philippines' GDP in 2022. For the Philippines, they actually have what we call overseas Filipino workers. They contribute 8.9% of the GDP. And seafaring takes a chunk of about 22% of what the diaspora, what Filipinos outside are remitting into the country. 22%. That's a great chunk. So the global demand and national imperative, the problem statement. The global shortage, the BIMCO and ICS manpower report forecasted that we will need about 89,000 new officers by 2026, which is almost here. The current supply base we have today, which is projected as in people coming out from the maritime training institutions, cannot meet up that number. And where we are today, mass autonomous vessels, semi-autonomous vessels are work in progress. So it's not a case of, okay, you cannot physically fit in, make this number. So let's get robots to represent or to fill in the gap. Actually, nothing to fill the gap. It's at this stage. So we'll also look at economic opportunities, remittances. A single officer can remit tens of thousands of dollars annually back into the country. And there are also direct and indirect employment. The mining sector, the mining agency will thrive, ship handling services will thrive. There are also knock-on effects to having this chunk. The flights, your national lines, your national carriers will also benefit from the wave. The national imperative, like we said, we have a lot of youth in Nigeria. We have sadly, I want us to look at it from two sides of the coin. On the sad part, we have high unemployment. On the good side, on the flip side, that should work for us. When you have high unemployment rates, there are great opportunities for you to have high number of people going to sea. Because studies have proven that for equivalent earning, say $5 earning at shore, $5 earning at sea, most people have employment. So the high employment rate we have today is actually an advantage for us. And of course, there's also the need for economic diversification, moving from oil and leveraging on the aspects. And more foreign exchange coming back into the country. When you say you want to come in to become a top quartile, as in the top 25%, you need to know who are the ones up there, who are the ones that you probably will be competing against. From the pie chart here, you can see Philippines takes the bite of a chunk of 13.3% of seafarer suppliers in the world. Russia Federation follows with 10.5%. Indonesia 7.6%. China 7.1%. India 6%. Nigeria for now we estimated at 0.4%, which is very negligible. So we are not even in the middle quartile. Very comfortable at the bottom quartile. And others contribute to 55% of the global supply. So, competitive advantage in global supplies of seafarers. A one-stop solution for the world-leading seafarer supplier nations. What do they really need? Or what do we really have that can position us in that quartile? Vibrant youth population as highlighted. Educated youth and fluency in maritime language, English. High employment rate, like I said earlier. Social beings, yeah, you must be able to, I'll give you a typical example. I was on a vessel in Singapore that we had people from about I think the highest I've had was from 10 different countries. So seafaring is a social kind of profession. You just must be able to mix. It's not a place for you to go and feel inferior. It's not a place for you to go and be too humble. You just must be able to socialize. You must also be able to adapt easily. And of course, the Nigerians are known for this. And this is another other important aspect. Excellent reputation of the nation. Sadly, for third world countries, one man's acts can be used to judge the whole nation. As in, one bad seafarer from a country mixing up in Singapore is enough for them to wake up and say, we are not looking for people from this country. But for other countries, individuals are accountable. They are judged by their action, not the whole nation. So we need to be very careful here that if we want to reposition ourselves, every seafarer going out there should see himself as an ambassador of the great nation Nigeria. Because by your action, we have seen it in Singapore when we went earlier in the early 90s. It was free for all, but today, a few negative activities, actions by some of our seafarers that led to most shipping companies not looking out for Nigerians. So every seafarer should see himself as an ambassador and act accordingly. So still on the global seafarer supplies, Singapore, Philippines, what did they do? Eastern Europe, what things did they do? And India, what do they have that's giving them this competitive advantage? Singapore government established a system. They have cultural acceptance. They speak English. I have a lot of things that what do you call them? Philippines put in place for them to get that niche, and part of which the EOEA is what they call Philippines Overseas Employment Administration. They have their offices at all the embassies. The government has invested so much to create that awareness, to set up the support system for their seafarers. If a Philippine seafarer gets into trouble, the government jumps into it. In any country, the embassy jumps into it. And that tends to give them that upper edge, that strong position. For East European, by proximity, they are closer to EU. And so naturally, it's easier, it's cheaper to have them on board. And they have high standard of training. For India has invested so much in technical education. Almost all the universities in India are offering maritime-related courses. And so the foundation is strong. They have very strong domestic shipping markets, Indian National Shipping Lines and the rest, which is that training base for Indian seafarers. When we had Nigerian National Shipping Line, and then of course, sadly, when we went bankrupt, most of our people went out. Because the seafarers were well trained, it was so easy for us to fit into the market out there, perform out there. Sadly today, what vessels do we have to give opportunities to our seafarers? Cabotage vessels, which is what we call home trade vessels. Are you going to give somebody an experience on a home trade vessel and then push him out into the international market? Is he going to survive? Is he going to be proficient? So let's look at our current position, the SWOT analysis of Nigeria. Strength, we have said before, the youth aspect, rich in maritime history, existing training institutions. The training institutions, I'll put a caveat to it. We'll talk about the training institutions. Because MTI is what we call the maritime training institution. It's the base for maritime development. If you look at the maritime clusters of every country, the base is usually the maritime training institutions, which must be standardized, which must meet international standards. It's not about number, it's about quality. If it is one, let that one be notch. The weaknesses we have today, outdated and insufficient training platforms, regulatory bottlenecks, Imagine a Nigerian, probably you have a job with a foreign company, you need to go and get a visa and move on to one or two or three other countries. How long is it going to take you to get a visa out of your country? So we'll get to see what we call the stakeholders that we'll need to bring in to make this a seamless operation. So critical shortage of bed for cadets for AC training. We are cadets are struggling, even the NSD project, the graduates are all out there still queuing for an opportunity to have that training experience. Globally, Nigeria is not associated with quality seafaring. It's something we really need to work on. Sadly, yeah, but that's the truth. So the opportunities available, like we said earlier, the global shortage of seafarers, growing Nigerian own fleet, it's growing now. And of course, now we also have a blue economy ministry, which is more like zooming into our problems. The threat we have is competition from established suppliers. These other guys, the guys currently on the top quartile, established. You know, like they say in boxing, you don't wait for points. You don't go fight a world champion expecting to win by points. If you want to beat the world champion, give him a knockout. And that will take away all subjectivity. So for us to give these existing champions a run for their money, we have to give them that knockout punches. Okay, our aspirations division. Division is to be recognized among the top 5 global suppliers of competent, certified, and highly sought after seafarers. So what does top quartile means? With respect to volume, you have to take a greater chunk. You have to look at the quality, recognition. Yes, you are in the white list. How marketable is your COC, the certificate of competency? It matters too. That's a major aspect. It's a topical issue that's being handled every time in Nigeria, or it's being brought to the table in Nigeria. Marketability of our COCs. How many countries would easily just come and say 3, 4, 5 certificates from different countries? Hey, I prefer Nigerian COC. And of course, the economic impact. This is our destination. We are not just aiming for numbers. We are aiming for a reputation. We want ship owners worldwide to actively seek out Nigerian seafarers, their competence and professionalism. 4 pillars. There could be many pillars, but let's take 4 major pillars. Pillar 1, education, training, and certification. Recall what I said, that maritime training institution is the foundation for every maritime cluster. Policy, regulation, and funding. Industry collaboration and cadet placements. We can't do this alone. The maritime training institutions can't do this alone. All stakeholders must come together. And of course, branding. You can have the best, but you need to sell yourself. Branding and international marketing strategy, also critical. So I'll take this 4 as the pillars. Like I said, there are other pillars, but let's focus on those 4 pillars. So for maritime training institution, the CV curriculum modernization, our curriculum must align with topical issues, must align with the expectation of IMO, must align with the expectation of this the ship owners out there. People are talking about autonomous vessels. Are we having anything in our syllabus to cover that? Green technologies, have we properly aligned the syllabus to this, or do we wait until we just wake up one day and they say, hey, if you don't have COP on this, you cannot go on board, and then we struggle to adopt or change our syllabus to capture that aspect. Infrastructure investment. We need to have state-of-the-art simulation. Some of the maritime training institutions in Nigeria are currently investing in simulators. We need to go more deeper into it. Acquisition of a dedicated training ship. I'll talk about it here. Yes, it is good to have a training ship. A particular country, I could mention South Africa, had a policy that if you, of 12 months, the maximum you can spend on a training ship is 9 months, and 3 months, the last 3 months must be spent on a trading vessel. I could understand why, because time enough on all the time spent on a training vessel without really having the practical experience of trading may not prepare you for a direct employment. So they had that policy, 12 months, 9 months, yes, on a training vessel that's acceptable maximum, and then the rest must be on a vessel that's trading and working. So that's the aspect of infrastructure. Faculty development, international trainer program with global maritime academies, exchange programs with other countries you pick as mentors. So you should look at mentors out there that you can collaborate with. I always tell people that IMO trainer program, 9 days is still not enough for you to say you have trained a trainer. The best chief engineer may not be a teacher, a good teacher. The best captain may not also not be the a better teacher. There are two different professions, honestly. Seafaring and teaching. So for you to come and lecture in a maritime training institution, it's not just enough packing ex-seafarers and chunking them into the academies. They need to be properly trained as teachers for them to be able to impact that knowledge to the younger ones. And of course, quality assurance, everything must be checked. Everything must be checked. We are trying to collaborate with maritime training institutions in Nigeria and Ghana. We are actually getting what we call quality assessors to be part of the team. You know, so we need to have the classification society to accredit our institutions to actually come and audit our schools, and that will tend to give the international community that level of comfort that yes, things are being done to standard. Under policy 2, okay, let me speed up now. Under policy 2, policy and regulation, streamlining of administration, maritime, the NIMASA will come in, needs to come in very strongly. However, it is not just NIMASA issue alone. NIMASA must be supported by the ministry. The ministry must be supported by the government. It's a whole spectrum. The whole spectrum of governance must be involved if we really want to place ourselves at that position of quarter. Funding is absolutely not cheap. Maritime education is not cheap. There needs to be some funding. Well, I put CVFF here. I was once the head of a cabotage department in NIMASA. I know that CVFF is money for stakeholders. The ones that contributed are the ones, it's their money. However, we can work with them to see how this can be used to further our aspiration towards becoming part of the top notch maritime suppliers in the world. The diaspora engagement, we need to get them all in with us. The third pillar is the industry collaboration, mandatory training. Of the truth, this is not just a Nigerian problem. The whole world is complaining about training berth for seafarers. So we need to engage shipping companies. We have a viable oil sector, and we could actually use leverage on Nigeria LNG model, to which CVIC, they are not doing FOB. FOB is just a small percentage of their sales, but the main is CIF. You buy the cargo, they own the vessels, they deliver the gas to you, and by so doing, NLNG is able to have that strong seafaring base. NNPC should come into this. They should look at the agreement we have for our sales and purchase agreement, the sales and purchase agreement for crude oil, and see how we can leverage this to help in training our cadets. Every vessel being used to lift up Nigerian crude, there should be some sort of law, part of the agreement, that you should at least have 2 or 3 cadets on board your vessel at no cost. So strategic partnership is very important. And Nigerian ship owners, yes, they are there, but the question is, how many ships do they have? But we still need to work with them. The alumni of Maritime Academy and the rest, they also need to come together and see ourselves as stakeholders. There's a summary at the end that highlights what every of this group is expected to do. Industry collaboration and placement, it's also part of it. So I'm going to skip that. It's so the sea time crisis, like I said, part A, time in school, part B, time on board the vessel. You have to have both. So it's estimated that 5,000 Nigerian cadets are stuck ashore, unable to complete the mandatory seat time required for certification. I've had two sad examples. I went to Calabar, I was in a restaurant, we were talking with the guys I was there with, and sadly, one of the stewards in that restaurant, head maritime, and eventually came to ask me and introduce himself as somebody that graduated from one of our maritime training institutions, now a steward in a restaurant. Last week, I was at the Dolphin Golf Club in Krikri, the Navy Golf Club. One of the caddies there also is an ex-cadet. He's still waiting for an opportunity to go to sea. Wasted time in college, no vessel for practical experience, and thus cannot be certified. So these are stories you hear. These are things you see on a daily basis, and you ask yourself, have we failed the next generation? So we need to look at government-funded vessels dedicated solely for cadet training. In the then, when we had the Nigerian National Shipping Line, we had River Mada and River Andoni that were training ship. Training and trading, that's the best you can have. It's trading and also a training vessel. Each of those vessels were having like 22 cadets at a particular time. And then strictly the enforcement of cabotage law, like I said, cabotage vessel, I am 50-50 on this. However, in the absence of this, you can fall back on this. We have to really use them now for the training of our cadet. Then the battering aspect, I have this, you have that. I had said something about the NLNG model, to which NLNG, the gas is from Nigeria. The gas are supplied, let me use the word Nigerian vessels, managed by Nigerian companies, and thus crewed by Nigerians, and giving us that wonderful opportunity for Nigerian cadets to be trained on board. NNPC should look at that, revise your agreement. Yes, you cannot break agreement, you cannot break covenant, but there's always what you call renegotiation of agreements. I'm almost there, guys. Not moving.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, Captain. I think, nine said.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm almost there.
Okay.
2 minutes more. Okay, so we look at the risk. There are a lot of risk involved in this. Nothing comes without a risk. So we look at the risk, lack of sustained funding, industry resistance, quality dilution. We need to mitigate this risk here. Lesson learned, I'm going to jump this. I've also highlighted the lesson learned from the Philippines. They have accredited organization. They've established a seamless certification system that once you mention Philippine COC, people will still employ you. They've had a vast network of maritime schools collaborating with schools from other countries and other regions. And of course, there's also the lesson learned from India. The slide will be made available. We can also latch on the lessons on the experiences of what the Indians have gotten right and then put back into our system. This is from Ukraine. Even Ukraine, it's a major supplier of seafarers. So we need to also learn from what they have gone through and then put back into our system. So finally, showstoppers. What are the things that can actually stop us on this drive? There are several factors that may work against us or any country that wants to get that position. Economic factor, high domestic wages, high training costs, weak government subsidies. The next one is education and training limitation, insufficient maritime academies, low training standards, poor access to sea time. The other one is the social and cultural challenges, negative attitude, declining interest in seafaring, aging workforce. The next one is regulatory policies, non-compliance with IMO/ILO standard, IMSAS audits. Have you closed out your IMSAS audit? Weak labor protection laws, slow certification processes. The other next one is industry and market factors, lack of strong shipping industry, like we said, limiting training and employment opportunities, reputation issues, I've said that already, limited global network, weak connections with international organizations and others, lack of respect for agreements. We know of some seafarers that don't respect agreements. They will jump, has to be signed up from the vessels, stealing cargoes. You can't have this kind of reputation and go and excel out there. And so we must work strictly on the code of conduct and strong consequence management. If you miss it, you pay for it. So call to action. Reposition of Nigeria as a top quarter supplier of seafarer requires a whole nation approach. For government, provide policy leadership, funding, and regulatory efficiency. The presidency should be involved, NIMASA should be involved, Federal Ministry of Transport should be involved, policymakers should be involved, foreign affairs should be involved, internal affairs, custom, immigration, Ministry of Petroleum should be involved. It's a whole spectrum should be involved. NNPC should be involved. No more FOB, use energy model. Maritime training institutions, quality training. So NIMASA oversees the maritime training institution. The audit should be strong to ensure that only institutions that are meeting international standard is allowed to train. So for seafarers, they should commit to continuous learning and uphold highest standard of professionalism. Other stakeholders has highlighted NNPC, Nigerian embassies, churches and mosques for morals, families and banks for easy remittances. And in summary, to be competitive in the global supply of seafarers, a country needs to put in place some of these mixes: regulatory and compliance framework, quality maritime education and training, infrastructure and institutional support, labor market competitiveness, digitalization and future readiness, internal branding and reputation, welfare and retention system. And in conclusion, Nigeria stands at an inflection point to transform its maritime workforce into a world-class talent pool. Achieving top quarter status requires coordinated actions across government, academia, and industry. This is our moment to harness the potential of our blue economy and our great asset, our people. This project will define our maritime legacy. Let's be the generation that made it happen. We are not just creating jobs, we are building a new nation, national export industry. We are not just training sellers, we are forging global ambassadors for Nigeria. The blueprint is clear, the resources are available, the global demand is undeniable. The only missing ingredient is our collective will to execute. Let us set sail on this strategic journey together. Thank you very much, and interactions time.
Thank you, Captain. Thank you, Captain. A very, very rousing presentation, and I know everybody's clapping for you in their cubicles. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for a very massive turnout. We have a very huge number of people. I know this is a very interesting topic. Now we're going to take a few comments. We're going to combine Captain Umoren and Professor Nick White questions to them. First of all, let's give chance to Captain Kingsley. You should mute yourself. Whoever is talking should mute themselves. Okay, so let's give Captain Kingsley Aban just 1 minute, please. Can you say what you want to say, Captain Kingsley Aban? Unmute yourself.
All right, good afternoon, sirs. Good afternoon, everyone. While standing on existing protocol, my name is Captain Kingsley Akpan. Presently, I work with LHCC Marine. Okay, regarding, just a quick one, regarding what Captain Umoren said, I wanted to raise some issues, and also maybe he can respond to this, because the problem of training he talked about, yeah, is very good. We lack training. I noticed that for some years now, Maritime, the NIMASA, has been training cadets under the NSDP programs. And I observed something which I raised issues. I have even written to NIMASA. I don't know if that later got to them. But what I noticed is they are training cadets while sending the same cadets you train abroad back to come and learn under, because we know basically in navigation in this seafaring, academic programs tends to take maybe like 30-40%, while the practical learning on the job takes about 60 or 70%. Now you are training NSDP cadets and sending that cadet back to me that you have certified to be an NCV captain, because I also hold Nigerian master license and it's written NCV. So is there no program you should raise? Because I started with unlimited, but as a cadet under OW, getting to masters, you have limited me to NCV. Now you are training unlimited cadet again to come under me. I have about 3 cadets on board my vessel right now to come under me and learn under an NCV captain. So I don't think there's any reasonable any reason for that. It's not reasonable at all. So the person you should focus on training, because you mentioned train the trainer, should be the trainer himself. I'm training this cadet that you sent to me from London, from everywhere, and bringing them to work to me. So you should be ready to train the captains who is going to train this cadet to get to these higher positions. You are not doing that. You're busy every year pushing cadets to train abroad. After that, sending them to come and work with a limited captain. I think that is completely wrong. The system should not be like that. You know, we should train the captains instead. Then the limitation of this license has, I have suffered. I applied with my master's license to Australia for me to be upgraded. They told me I have to come back and do OW, even with my master's license, after being a master for over 7 or 10 years. So I have to come back and do OW. What is NIMASA doing about that? They don't have any MOU with any country. And what is your limitation all about? NIMASA should be able to explain this limitation in clear details to seafarers. I think that would help a lot. Thank you.
Okay, your question is noted. I think Captain Umoren will give you just a few minutes, because what is going to happen is there is going to be a post-event forum where we are marking certain people that are going to feature in that forum, and we're going to trash out this. It's a physical meeting. So, Captain Umoren, please, can you respond to him quickly?
Okay, thank you very much. Captain Kingsley, thanks for your questions. And I think, let me put it this way, I'm at the right position to answer all your questions, because I have been in NIMASA as the head of Maritime and Safety Department. First, there's absolutely nothing wrong in NIMASA training as many people as they want, wherever they want to train. I'll put it this way, if you could remember the projection, we said we still need 89,000 seafarers by 2026. The sky is wide enough for many stars to shine. However, when you talk about stars, we have what we call the first magnitude star and the third magnitude star. First magnitude star are brighter stars. Who are the brighter stars in our own field? The ones quality seafarers. So we need to have quality seafarers to shine out there as first magnitude stars. That limitation, there's something we started in NIMASA when I was head of maritime safety. Yes, there's nothing wrong in having NCV. It is there in STCW. STCW actually has a section for NCV, near coastal voyages. However, it is the responsibility of the flag now to look at you young guys that I cannot truncate you to your career to local waters. We can actually have a bridging course. NIMASA can actually design it. I made a presentation like that some years back. I'm not sure where it is now. We can actually have a bridging course for you now to do, you that have Masters Unlimited. You could do this bridging course, and then they move you to the foreign going land. It's something we need to engage the NIMASA. It's something we need to talk probably when we have a larger forum, that it needs to be done. Yes, I totally agree with you. Yes, you started as a near-coastal guy, but there should be a way for you to link up to the other one. Flag said, as far as IMO is concerned, flag said are at liberty to do whatever they think is right and meet international standard. So that bridging course could be just like a 6-month program arranged by the NIMASA, intensive 6-month program or 9-month program, and then you move from there to a foreign going land. So I think, like I said, you can always get my contact. We can discuss this further, or we wait until when we have this larger forum. But everybody will be there, and we tell ourselves the truth, because these things are doable. So Kingsley, feel your heartbeat. I'm with you, and I will support in whatever way I can in bringing this to the attention of the policymakers.
Yes, we'll bring it up for now. So I think we'll take one more question. This Gunwalk Henry. Can you 1 minute 1 minute. Go and work, Henry. Unmute yourself. Ask your question quickly, please.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Captain Henry Gomwalk. I was also here last week. So I want to comment and at the same time ask some questions because I want to say something based on this presentation by Captain Umoren. Thank you very much for that presentation. Okay, we want to be a global player. We're talking about training new cadets. I wouldn't want to go into what Captain Kingsley has said already. But I want to look at the perspective of those who are already qualified to be at that international level. And I want to say that because I happen to be one of them. I got trained in UK and I have a master license from UK. And I can tell you to the fact that one of the challenges we have, you touched it a little bit, that it is a serious problem because nobody is touching it. One of the problems is that even when we secure jobs outside of the shores of Nigeria, we are limited by the issues of visas. And presently, my last job was in Saudi Arabia. And now I am unable to return to Saudi Arabia because I am unable to get a visa back to Saudi Arabia because Nigeria has got a visa restriction to Saudi Arabia. The same thing, USA now just put that visa restriction, and there are about 300 to 400 Nigerians who are working in the cruise lines in USA that are unable to return to their jobs. I know that those of us in Saudi Arabia are well more than 500 that now are unable to return to Saudi Arabia because of visa restrictions. In United Arab Emirates, same thing. A lot of Nigerians are unable to return to their jobs because of visas. The same thing with other countries, Kuwait, what Qatar was issuing. And just last week, Qatar has said they are no longer going to issue visas to male. They only issue to females who are coming for any kind of tourism, business, transit, whatever it is. They only give to the female part of any family, but they cannot give to the males. So it is beginning to affect the seafarers who are working in Qatar now. And this, we see that there's no engagement between those who are in charge of seafarers in Nigeria and the government to have these policies, like in Europe, where some countries now give seafarers visas, give ship joining visas, give some kind of, and because these countries engage with each other so as to facilitate this movement of seafarers easily, so that even when the policy is affecting other parts of the whatever, seafarers have some kind of free movement to join their ships wherever they are going. This is not our case in Nigeria here. And those who are already qualified, who are having the jobs out there, are not doing anything. So I want to ask my question, is there something that is being checked to see that those who are qualified actually hit the market with the shortage of seafarers that is now looming around the world? That is my own question.
Okay. Captain? Captain Umoren. Captain, are you there?
Yes, sorry. Yes, I was trying to unmute myself. I just put back that slide 23 on the screen.
Yes.
Captain, like I said, I feel you're happy because I've been one of you. And Nigerian National Line went down. We all left for Singapore. I worked in Singapore for 7 years. Things were good. Things were fine. Things were wonderful. I feel you're happy. But you can see from this slide what I said. From the government, I put the internal affairs, the embassies. That's what Philippines has done. All the embassies, foreign embassies in Philippines, they work together with this POWE. They engage them. And so Philippine seafarers don't have any issue with visa. So that's what we also need to do. So I guess for the organizer, when we are having this meeting, these listed stakeholders, often we don't even list them as stakeholders, but I'm listing them as stakeholders. Let's invite them, not just the operational level. Let our minister engage them. Let's engage all the embassies. I'll give an example, even from the Abuja MoU. We are even engaging the embassies of our member state here. So we need to engage them. So this issue, I mean, we cannot get to that point because, like you said, a guy is supposed to join a vessel and he goes for a visa and it's given a knock. 2 times, the shipping company will not consider Nigeria again. So we need to engage all these people listed here. and then progress on this.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm available to discuss this further, even offline.
Yes, yes. So, Captain, what we're going to do, as we said, I have already announced there's going to be a post-event forum, which is technical, and which will consider all these technical issues. We're not going to engage bureaucracy. We're going to go to the issues, and we're going to seek solution for everyone that is tabled. I think we'll have to proceed. Let's proceed with and now we'll give a chance to Engineer Bob Alfa, who is making a presentation about the last days of the Nigerian National Shipping Line. He was the last managing director of the Nigerian National Shipping Line. And this was the Abacha regime, the Sani Abacha regime. And so, Captain Engineer Alfa, we're going to give you about 15 minutes to, speak up, say your lot, and let's hear the comments from others. Please unmute yourself and go ahead, Engineer.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning and good afternoon. I don't mind sharing my screen.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay.
We can see you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me to speak on the last days of the Nigerian National Shipping Line. It is a sad comment, and in fact, it made me to look like an undertaker, that topic. But let me state here clearly, the demise of the Nigerian National Shipping Line has nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with Bob Alfa. And I'm glad that you have given me this opportunity to, clear the air. My subject is simple. That is, I'm not talking of training or anything technical, a living subject like the presenters before me. I'm only here to state the fact and to correct some impressions. Now, the Nigerian National Shipping Line, when I joined the NNSL, with great enthusiasm. And when I was appointed the managing director, everybody thought it was an opportunity to get it right, because I was the first managing director from the industry, let's say career MD. And my colleagues, everybody, were very happy, because up until then, the successive managing directors had been from management of the shipping line, some from political appointees, let's put it that way, who had no knowledge of shipping. And they ran NNSL like, like any other company without knowing anything about shipping. So people expected a lot. They expected a lot from me, and rightly so, especially as I had a sound background. Before joining the Nigerian National Shipping Line, I had a first degree in mechanical engineering from the Ahmadu Bello University. So they employed me, sent me abroad for training. I trained in Glasgow in naval architecture, in Bakleko, where soldier engines were being built, and Elderslie Dockyard, where ship repairs and operations. So you can see, I was lucky, to be trained in the art of technical shipping, let's put it that way. So when I came out as junior engineer, I interacted with so many people. Oh, this is this, this is that. And we were very happy. We ran the shipping company, in our participation from the sea. But of course, you see, the business of NNSL was mainly in the office. They directed, the affairs of where the ship should go, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not here to talk of anything technical, anything, that is a living issue, like my colleagues have done. So my job is so simple, talking about the demise of NNSL. In a nutshell, I don't know why NNSL was killed. Let me put it that way. Very, very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. When I was appointed MD, I said, this is a golden opportunity. My colleagues, everybody, we said, let's join hands and run this company efficiently. So with the background I had, I now sat with the ministry officials, and the minister then, he listened very well and said, well, the best way to go around this is to minimize government interventions, not intervention, interference. Because I told him that interference is what disrupts the efficient running of the NNSL, from what I had seen. An example is I met a board, and we were having a meeting in London. And at that meeting, the chairman of the board was presenting his address when a call came from Lagos. And he stopped middle of the exercise to say that the board had been dissolved. What happened? We didn't know. So, which meant that all the members, were sacked. So put it that way. And I wish I had been sacked along that day, but they allowed the MD to remain. So I carried all the burden of running from A to B, doing all the office work, trying to run the company technically, as well as, the normal day-to-day briefing, and then going about telling the officials at the ministry what the difficulties were, and so on and so forth. It is so sad. What killed NNSL? I don't know. What killed NNSL? I don't know. But I'm glad my colleagues in the industry that are having the opportunity to hear from me now that I don't really know why NNSL was liquidated. We were doing so well, let me put it that way, because I saw the company, they acquired similar ships at a time. That is a lot. I think we had 11 ships from Korea and 8 or so from Yugoslavia at the same time. I sailed on those ships as chief engineer. So when you have a problem with one ship, especially if it's a technical issue, you can be sure that a similar problem will occur on the sister ships. So we were trading information just to make sure that we don't go down simultaneously. Then, of course, when a ship is due for dry dock, this one is due, this one is due. We're just all bunching up one after the other, for such important regulatory services. Now, the ships were aging at the same time. Revenue was not really, coming in as such. We had to do mandatory repairs, and that was a big chunk of the cost that NNSL was experiencing. So all the suppliers, virtuals, technical services, those that dry dock ships and all that, they were being owed. And a lot of them were arresting ships. So these are the kind of problems that I met. And
okay, Captain, thank you very much.
No,
Captain,
sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me interrupt quickly so as to give ourselves a direction because it's a very large field. We'll give ourselves direction. So what we'll do is intervals, we'll be giving time for questions. Like somebody, Captain Eboreme has raised his hand. Captain Eboreme, unmute yourself. 30 seconds, 1 minute, please ask your question. Captain Eboreme, ready?
It was a mistake. I didn't raise up my hand. It was a mistake.
Okay, so Captain, what I would, let me, on behalf of, let me ask for us. Now, the Abacha government that gave the order, what was your communication from Abacha government that led that, at the time they said that this line should be, should stop trading? What was your communication with the Abacha government? How did that go?
Well, it's a very sad and sensitive issue. Like I said, we're embarking on what we call retonnaging. Some 5 aging ships were approved to be sold and new ones to be bought in their place. So I had a directive to give them one of those ships. And of course I said, there was no board. I was relating directly with the minister at the time. So I said, there is a procedure for, selling off government assets, especially ships. So we have, even if you want me to do what you want me to do, let me go through the ropes. We have to advertise in maritime publication worldwide so that people can have opportunity to, to bid. Number one, they didn't like that. They sent people to me to threaten me that they wanted that ship at all cost. Now, those ships were bought maybe around 12 million. This time, from Lloyd's survey's assessment, the ships were now worth about 1.5, 1.2 million. So when I told them that this is the value of the ship, they didn't take kindly to that. They thought I was trying to be funny. Anyway, so they did not like the idea of me saying that we should go, for international bidding. Okay, so this was the situation before the new minister came in. That is the military man, Gumel. And of course, Gumel being part of the Abacha regime, he promptly arrested me. Yes. And then to make it look good, the immediate members of the NNSL management, if government wants to get you, they must always find a way to do it. So those people, for no reason, they were arrested with me. I didn't know the reason for the arrest. They set up a panel led by Admiral Tukum. And so it was at that panel that they were asking me, why was that ship, not sold to so that I appointed what do you call them now? Brokers. I said, no, nothing to do with me. And I want to say something here. I want to put it on record. Chief Babatope, who was the minister, when he came to that tribunal, he was so sad. He said to me, Bob, you were undergoing so much pressure. Why didn't you tell me? I said, look, I was under a threat. And there's no way I could tell you, Chief. He felt so sad. He felt for me, because he did not know that, the ship was being requested to be given to the Abacha family. Anyway, that's just an example. That guy, he felt so sad about it. But all the same, from that tribunal, they now sent us to various prisons across Nigeria. I got the worst prison, which is Geshwa. In that prison, 3.5 years, no communication. The family never knew where I was.
3.5 years.
Yes. So when the regime changed, I think Ibrahim Kumasi refused to renew their Decree 2. So they had to bring us to court. It was in that court, during the process that I heard that NNSL had been liquidated. And another thing is, when I was in Geshwa, one Navy guy working with Captain Agwan, who was the liquidator, brought me a letter of dismissal from the ministry. The prison governor, in Geshwa, told me not to accept it. No, I said, I'll take it because it's one of the documents I have to put together to exonerate myself. So I took it. Not I was in prison when I was dismissed. No query before, nothing, So how I went to court and got judgment, all those are not part of the issue now. Although the terms of the judgment, like my salary and all that, today, they have not been paid. I've been running from A to B. I want to let you know that as we are talking, I have not enjoyed NNSL. I did my best. Honestly, it's so sad. But my main constituency, my colleagues at sea, I want them to know that NNSL was liquidated by, people who had the might. It had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with those managers. It had nothing to do with seafarers, because seafarers, like I told you, you've heard about my training program. Most of us were trained like this. And I listened to Captain Umoren very well, because you see, all the things he presented, the processes, we all went through it. There's no problem with seafaring. No problem with seafaring. The problem about running a shipping company is in the office, especially when you have people who do not understand shipping. Thank God that the situation I think today.
Yeah, thank you, Captain. We don't have so much time. So thank you for what you have showed us. And Kayode, I don't think we can take your question right away because we have another presentation. You can save it. After our presentation from Mr. Donald Ibe, then we can do a few more questions. And the rapporteur also should be ready because we don't have so much time. So Donald Ibe, where are you? Can you unmute yourself and quickly go through your slide, please? We are giving you maybe 10, 12 minutes.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir. Dr. Edmund, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You need to share your screen, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. In the next 10 minutes or thereabouts, we'll just have a rundown to the NIMASA Act, Section 35-38. We want to see the suspended cargo allocation program. Want to see what happens. So this more like an addendum to some of the things that have been said already. Having a historical look at the Act, of course, we know it was out of Decree 10 of 1987, which officially set up the national shipping policy. And of course, the same Decree 10 set up the National Maritime Authority, which later became NIMASA, to implement the national shipping policy. Then in 2007, the NMA was changed to NIMASA. The supervising ministry for the national shipping policy was the then Federal Ministry of Transportation, which is now, since 2023, renamed the Federal Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy. Then the stakeholders were the maritime shipping companies and the operators. A brief look at the history of the NMA. Like we said before, it was established by Decree 10 in 1987 to implement the national shipping policy, and it was actually, the national shipping policy was drawn out of the UNTAC Code of Conduct for Liners Conferences, which we all know. The goal of the NMA then was to improve Nigerians' balance of payments, then to ensure participation of indigenous shipping lines in international shipping trade, and then to, of course, promote export trade. The NMA had the freight committee actually was composed of the NMA as chairman and the secretariat. Then the CBM was an observer member. The Nigerian Shippers Council was observer member. The Federal Ministry of Transport was observer member. The Nigerian Ports Authority was observer member. The Nigerian Customs also was observer member, while the shipping companies were the participants. These are the composition of the freight committee that was there. Then for the cargo allocation principle, the 40% was given to the buyer nations, another 40% to the seller nations, while the remaining 20% was given to the cross traders. Of course, the key players in the industry, as we know, for the conference.
Yeah, Mr. Don, someone saying that you have to raise your voice.
Okay. Am I audible now, sir?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that. So for the key players in the industry, then, with respect to the conference lines, we have the UK West Africa line, which is the OCWA. We have the Continental Europe West African Conference, the COWAC. We have the Mediterranean West African Conference, the MEWAC. We have the Far East West African Conference, the FEWAC, the American West African Conference, the ANWAC, the Brazil West African Conference, and then intermediate routes. Then the key players in the industry then, there were actually two accredited Nigerian players, depending on their ownership of the trading vessels. We have the indigenous carriers and the national carriers. They were all members of the conferences that are entitled to the 40% of all the cargoes originating in the conference. Then the foreign carriers, like we said earlier, had 40% of the cargoes originating in their own conferences, while the cross traders were entitled to 20% of the cargoes from all the conferences. Then if we look at the content of the cargo allocation forms that was used then, it looked at the type of cargo, the value of the cargo, the quantity of the cargo, the shipper's details, the receiver's details, origin of the cargo, estimated sea freight value of the cargo, and estimated arrival time of the cargo at destination. Of course, all these documentations were manually done. They were manually done. Then the cargo allocation forms were called the Form M, which composed of the Form C31 for import and defunct C32 for export. Now, to look at the major shipping lines of that time. On the Nigerian side, we have, just like we've just heard from the former director, the Nigerian National Shipping Line, the African Ocean Line, the Box Ship Nigeria Limited, the Brower Shipping, Genesis Worldwide, Nigerian Green Lines, and the Houselock Lines. That's on the Nigerian side. Then on the foreign side, of course, we know them. We have the P&O, Nedloy, and the rest. Then the cross traders are the Max, the O&T line, and the rest. Those are the major players on the Nigerian side and on the foreign side. Of course, we know that the enemy had some modest achievements, and some of them we can look at here. Then they registered over 50 indigenous shipping lines, and the allocation of cargoes to them to participate in the national shipping for the first time. And that was a great achievement. Then we have the granting of loans that was worth $92 million to the indigenous and national carriers to buy ships and engage in long-term charter agreements. And they purchased MV Trainer, which was a training ship for cadets of the Maritime Academy, Oron. And I think that was a good achievement with respect to the seafarers issue that was raised by Captain Umoren. The freight committee had some challenges, which one of them is the foreign dominance. The foreign carriers then, they were opposed to the national shipping policy in favor of globalization because the indigenous and national carriers could not compete on a level playing field. Then also the foreign carriers had access to low interest loans in their own countries for buying ships, whereas the Nigerian carriers had very few ships. The cargo allocation process was also done manually. It lacked transparency and was open to bribery and compromise. So some of the Nigerian carriers could not even carry the cargoes allocated to them. So they had to sell them for address commission. So these are some of the challenges the freight committee had. And then, of course, the issue of small cargo packets. Some of the allocated cargoes were too small that they can't even make a full container load. So it was a problem. The allocation given to the Nigerian carriers, they were small. Then at other times, the allocated cargoes had been lifted by the time the Nigerian carriers arrived at the point of cargo origin, owing to delays and some of this manual issue of processing the front ends. Then the foreign carriers, they mounted a strong campaign against the Nigeria's national shipping policy, using the evidence of corruption and inefficiencies in the system. Again, after the administration of the then president, Ibrahim Babangida, succeeding administrations did not provide the same backing for NMA to continue to implement the national shipping policy. Then in 2001, under President Obasanjo, the cargo allocation program, the ship acquisition and building fund, everything was suspended. So a quick look at the way forward. A quick look at the way forward. If we have to make progress, first, there should be a ministerial directive to reactivate the implementation of this NIMASA Act using chartered vessels. Then secondly, there should be reactivation of the NIMASA's Freight Committee and the development department. Thirdly, NIMASA has to publish guidelines to pre-qualify the carrier and the local government cargoes and publish a expression of interest notice to indigenous operators. Then also, future cabotage waivers must be signed only by the minister. It has to be signed by the minister alone. And then in the issue of the foreign carriers now, the foreign carriers has to be limited to maybe only 2 ports in the country per time, so that they will not have to extend their activities into the inland ports. I think this will give opportunity for the indigenous ports to have their leeway. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ibe. Please mute your systems if you are. Mr. Akin, so mute anybody that is not presenting. Mr. Akin, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Ibe. Thank you for that. Somebody is raising their hand. So now we're going to take a few questions before we give. Mr. Akin, mute anybody that is not authorized to speak, please. Okay, so we give opportunity to Kayode now to ask question. Quickly, please, Mr. Kayode.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to all our presenters. Fantastic job from everybody. And I'm happy that the last presenter actually presented before I finally had the opportunity to ask this question, because I could see some solution modes towards the end of that presentation, which is actually where I was going to, focus my question. Yes, we have seen from experience now. We have a lot of experience in the House regarding, all the subject things we are discussing about: owning vessels, operating vessels, developing manpower, and all that, which are very, very crucial. Of course, all these things are guided by some of the acts and policies that we have, which we know that currently most of them we have, if we look in depth, we have faulted some part of those acts and policies, and that's why we're calling for a review. So my question would be, going to solution mode, or maybe this is a bit premature because we are gathering momentum, but then what is our strategy? Because this thing needs to, at this point, I don't think we should delay too much. We should begin to strategize and begin to consult and engage appropriately, the different levels of government that we need to, because this thing is going to be, I think this is going to require the act to be modified and to be, amended. So what is our strategy for acquiring? Because vessel acquisition, as we talked now, is a difficult thing for private individuals. And I believe that from all the experience that have been shared, look at Engineer Alfa talking with this kind of experience, I will not even pray that we should put this thing in the hand of government directly again. I happen to also sail on the National Shipping Line. I know I was on the Umoren, vessel. We know the kind of benefit that we are, giving to National Shipping Line in terms of cargo carrying, rights. So how do we now ensure that anybody, any private indigenous shipping company who wants to do, because these are the people that can manage this thing effectively, anybody who wants to do, how do we guarantee cargo for them? How do we ensure that the registration process of the vessels, the ship's registration process, is streamlined so that it will become easier? Look at, for example, the national carrier status now. For you to register, you must own a ship. Where are the ships?
No, you have made your point, Captain. Captain, you have made your point. Sorry, you have made your point. It's noted. Yeah, it's noted. If you see some of the things, some of the presentations we are making, some of these things are going to be correct. As I said, there's going to be a technical post-event forum where these issues are going to be trashed out and interactions with government and the agencies will take place. And we're hoping for certain solutions. Nigeria is not going to go back to the time of asking people to buy ships before they carry cargo. No, they have to carry cargo using charter ships for at least 5 years before the expectation will be for them to buy ships, because cargo has to come first. So that section of the act, this is what we are preempting. Let's give opportunity to iPhone. Who is iPhone? Can you introduce yourself? Can you unmute yourself? And we'll give you 30 seconds. Please ask your question quickly before the rapporteur comes in.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charles Ohanwe. I worked for Nigeria LNG for a while. I was one of the first Nigerian captain of those LNG ships. I actually joined in a bit late, so my apologies. I missed the previous presentation, apart from the last one. But listening to the feelers, the feelers I'm getting, a lot of what I'm going to talk about probably has been mentioned. But as we all know, ship acquisition don't come cheap, doesn't come easy. And the business of going into shipping is a long-term one because return on ships, most times if you're lucky, you can make 7%, 8%, 9% max if you're lucky. That's the return. So it's not a money-making venture. That's why the Oyibos that do it, a lot of times it's family business. It's long-term. People are in it for ages. So I'm hearing presently about government intervention, government this, government that. Government on its own is a bad businessman. Everything must come from private individuals, and private individuals need banks. And when you need banks, what is the capacity of Nigerian banks to fund?
Yes, please, we need your question because we have to, we need your question if you have a question.
No, I was reacting to the last presentation.
Okay.
We have to sort our banks out first before we can start talking about these capital intensive ventures.
Okay, no problem, Mr. Howard. But I have to stop you. Because we don't have time. I'm sorry. But we have noted your point, Mr. Howard. Thank you very much. We're going to call in Professor David Aworawo. I hope he's around. Professor David Aworawo has to take the floor now to give us the Rapporteur's report, a brief of it. There will be publications on our website. I am going to type our web page of the center. So a lot of this information is going to be there. The recordings of the webinar are going to be uploaded there, so people can go up there and download it and listen to it again and join us in future post-event programs. But we're going to give Professor Aworawo the chance now to do his rapporteur's work. Professor Aworawo, are you around? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm here. Just put it there.
Oh, please.
Yes, I'm here.
The floor is yours now. Go ahead.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Let me try and put on my video so that.
Yes. So after Professor Aworawo's presentation, then we can relax and take more questions. So Prof, try to round up in 5-7 minutes, please.
Okay. No, just here is okay. Yeah. So let me put on my start my video and see. And okay, it's clear now.
Yes, we can see you. We can see you now.
Fine. Because there's power outage here, and I was thinking.
No problem.
That, but I think it's clear enough. Yeah. So let me quickly just summarize all that we have done today, beginning with, of course, some of the excerpts of what we had last week, Thursday, when we commenced this process. The webinar began with a brief introduction of the purpose, the objectives of the webinar by Dr. Edmund Chilaka, the convener. And it began by, making reference to sections 35 to 38 of the NIMASA Act, which gives the indigenous carriers in Nigeria the right to carry federal projects, oil and gas, non-oil related rail, construction, and others. That act will have made it possible for indigenous carriers to develop capacity and, of course, to bring prosperity from that sector, because carrying cargo is the core of, of maritime trade, and of course, those who operate shippers generally, to put it in a nutshell. The Cretan, for you may refer to the Cretan, we set up the Maritime Authority, And then, of course, you know, how things developed gradually from that point. At the initial stage when the decree was, you know, promulgated, there was implementation up to a point, and some commendation for the Babangida administration at the time, which paid attention to the need to develop indigenous carriers and you know, strengthen the capacity of those engaged in maritime trade in Nigeria, especially ship owners. However, the policy was not well implemented. There were challenges, there were issues. And in 2001, the cargo allocation implementation was suspended under the Obasanjo government. And Nigeria operators now fail to have the advantage they had as provided for in the NIMASA Act, especially as indicated in sections 35 to 38 of the Act. Dr. Chilaka made reference to a huge project that, you know, is ongoing at the moment, the Abuja-Kaduna-Kano pipeline project, which according to him, you know, would take 51,250 cm steel, you know, petroleum and gas and all the other ones. And, you know, the projects allocated for, or awarded for $130 million. And that it will require $72 million, you know, for the movement of the equipment and, of course, the material to that project. If the NIMASA Act had been active, this would have been a huge boost to ship owners in Nigeria and, of course, by extension, developing the maritime sector generally. But with the suspension of NIMASA Act 2001, which has continued on the present, it means that all of this, you know, money that will go into conveying all the equipment and everything for this project will go to foreign concerns. So he concluded by saying that there is the need to continue the advocacy for the amendment of the NIMASA Act and the implementation of the provisions that gave advantages to indigenous carriers up till 2001. Indeed, he stated that one of the reasons for the webinar is further draw attention to the issues so that the advocacy can be further strengthened. After him, we have Professor Nick White, who spoke on economic decolonization and national shipping and made comparison, you know, with Southeast Asia, focusing on Singapore, Malaysia, and of course, other countries within that axis. He began from the small things, talking about stamps, how he has been collecting stamps that are related to shipping, and using it to try to gauge countries' interest in shipping and the rest of them. And that we had had economic nationalism as far as shipping is concerned, because newly independent countries, virtually all of them, established national shipping lines, which they ran, you know, for many years, and that yeah, for economic purposes, yes, but also for the purpose of nationalism. He drew attention to the fact that when these ships fly, when these ships move across along the waters, they fly the flags of their different countries, which was a symbol of national pride, and that was a major reason for, you know, newly independent countries establishing shipping lines in addition to the economic advantage derivable from all of this. But he stated that after some decades of running these shipping lines, they had problems, and he traced a major determinant of this. He said the decline in the prices of commodity in the 1980s, which affected, you know, the capacity of this shipping lines to carry cargo and all of that. And, you know, by the late 80s, 90s, some of these countries began to sell off and liquidate the shipping lines they had established at independence. He also pointed out that even Singapore, which had a very vibrant one, which ran for a long time, regrettably, has sold its own shipping line as well to a French company in 2016. We showed that the struggle that affected shipping lines established by countries in the aftermath of independence and their eventual liquidation is not limited to just Nigeria, Ghana, or African shipping lines. It also the same pattern is discernible in the experiences of shipping lines in Southeast Asia, where Professor White zeroed in his analysis. Professor White, of course, concludes by saying that the business of shipping and running shipping lines is a serious one, and is one that requires all the expertise, all the funding, all the technical know-how to make it sustainable, beyond economic nationalism and the desire to fly the flag of one's country on ships in the different waters. Then we had the presentation on closing the register, which looked at the close and open register, for ships, and he, of course, focusing on the Nigerian experience. And he said that a closed register is expected to develop local industry and all that. And he made comparison between closed versus open registry, and he came to the conclusion that that also needs to be reformed. And he recommended a hybrid of closed and open registry, considering the Nigerian shipping environment and the shipping ecosystem. He talked about the Cabotage Act, and says that the closed registry that the government currently runs is not very suitable considering the local peculiarities. But of course, concludes by saying the hybrid system will likely be better. Then Captain Sunday Umoren spoke on strategic positioning of Nigeria as supplier of seafarers. He highlighted the advantages Nigeria has that makes focusing on seafaring a good thing. He talked about the fact that Nigeria has 850 kilometers of waterways, which positions Nigeria very well as a maritime country to take advantage of the maritime environment. He also pointed to Nigeria's Nigeria's population, the structure of Nigeria's population, 60% of Nigeria's 230 million people being under the age of 25 as an advantage that Nigeria could leverage on to develop capacity in supplying of seafarers. He mentioned that 89,000 more seafarers will be needed in 2026, and that means that there will be a shortfall that Nigeria can take advantage of if it develops capacity in this area. He gave some statistics of countries that are dominant in the seafaring business. Philippines being at the top with 13.5%, Russia following, India, China, Singapore, and Nigeria having something far lower than the 1%, and of course all the other countries around 50%. He highlights the positives, and some of which he mentioned at the outset: the waterways, population structure of Nigeria, and then high unemployment that Nigeria has. Nigeria could take advantage of it to get people away from the job market, to train them to become seafarers. He highlighted several other issues. Fluency in English, English being Nigeria's official language, and then English also being the dominant language in the maritime trade and the seafaring. There are things that position Nigeria at an advantage in, taking advantage of seafaring. He talked about the huge remittances that come from seafarers, so countries that have developed capacity in this area, as a reason, one of the reasons why Nigeria should focus on that and ensure that it takes a greater chunk of the seafaring, supply of seafarers globally. Of course, he also identified the challenges and then, of course, the risks. Some of the challenges, lack of adequate infrastructure, training beds not being, adequate, the image of Nigeria, difficulties in developing strategic partnership, and several other challenges, which, according to him, are not insurmountable if there is the will. And he thinks there is the will, and that as the advocacy for the implementation of Section 3538 of the NIMASA Act is ongoing, the need to also develop greater capacity in seafaring should also accompany it. Then we had Engineer Bob Alfa, former Managing Director of NNSL. Very emotional, I must say, his presentation, that he was excited when he was appointed MD because as a player in that environment, he thought he would bring his knowledge, his experience to bear in, developing the shipping line and, making it fulfill the objective for which it was established. He said, well, he started well, he was trained, he had training in addition to the skill he already had. And that, stood him in good stead to be able to lift NNSL, to be among the best globally. But unfortunately, government intervention and greed on the part of, the highest level of Nigerian government at the time made it impossible for him to fulfill his objective and, to achieve what he set out to do from the outset. And according to him, the last straw was when, NNSL ships, some aging ships were to be sold, 5 of them, and to acquire new ones. And then the Abacha family, the Abacha, the head of state was interested in some of the ships being given to the family. And of course, he wanted to stand on the side of what is right, and then insisted that there must be bidding and all that for them. And as they say, the rest is history. That Gumel, who was minister, got him arrested for not complying with government order, so to speak, and he had to suffer tremendously by being locked up for over 3 years. He also mentioned Ebenezer Babatokwe was Minister for Transport at some point during all of this, who expressed sadness over how he was treated. But of course, again, this reveals the challenges that Nigeria faced at that time, and not just in terms of dictatorship, authoritarianism, but in terms of corruption and the problems that people who stood for what is right suffered or faced at the time, and a lot of suffering that they endured in the course of attempting to do what is right. But I will ask a question later. I hope Engineer Alfa is still there. I would like to know what the economic performance of NNSL was at the time, because Engineer Alfa insists that the NNSL didn't have to be liquidated and that it was doing well. But we need to find out what the economic situation of NNSL was at the time. Was it viable? Was it solvent? Some details will be needed for us to be able to defend that position when we live here. Anyway, that will be after this. Now, finally, we had Donald Ibe, who spoke on the suspension of cargo allocation program in retrospect. Of course, that is a core. It took off from where Dr. Chilaka started last week by talking about the NIMASA Act, Decree 10 of 1987, which set up, which empowered the NIMASA to implement the shipping policy, the country's shipping policy. And of course, the allocation of cargo to indigenous carriers, how it was implemented for some time and then suspended in 2001, and the suspension has remained in force until now. Mr. Ibe drew attention to the need to reactivate, this aspect of the NIMASA Act and ensure that it is implemented. He also, profiled solution. He highlighted a lot of things which somebody has already commented on, that after highlighting all the problems, what is the way forward? Mr. Ibe did well by stating clearly what needs to be done. Review the act so that certain aspects that are not positive, can be, updated in line with current realities. But then ensure that what, the core of the provision of the act, as far as indigenous carriers having an advantage in government cargo, is implemented as provided for in the act. Of course, he also pointed out the fact that, as part of his recommendations, that foreign carriers should not be allowed to call more than two ports at the same time, and they also should not be allowed into inland ports, as is the case, in any case, in many parts of the world. So he concludes with those recommendations, which I think, will be of interest to all participants in this, webinar, as we forge ahead to see how to get government to pay attention to this important aspect of, the Nigerian economy, which has for a long time not attracted the required attention. This is my laconic summary of the presentations, both last Thursday and then up till today. Dr. Chilaka, over.
No, Captain. No, Prof. Thank you very much. You did your best seminar as always. Thank you very much. Thank you. And as you said, I know there are questions. The reason why I try to let all our presenters do their presentations before we go into long-winded questions is because I want everybody to get the gist of the matter before we now go into. So the questions you asked, yes, I think we'll start with that and maybe give Engineer Bob Alfa, maybe 2 minutes to respond. If anybody has other questions, we can also take them, and other comments and remarks. So, Engineer Bob Alfa, sir, can you heard his question?
Yes.
He wanted to find out how NNSL was doing anyway before the ultimate order came.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I mentioned the minister at the time because, he was determined with the management of NNSL that we should get the company going. So in that regard, he led us to various creditors abroad. I think in the past presentation, something has been said about NNSL owing, people worldwide, wherever we traded.
Can you speak louder, engineer, please?
Okay, we scheduled meetings with the creditors.
Yeah.
That NNSL was owing, and it was the minister that led us. So a very powerful delegation led by Minister Babatokpe. And I keep mentioning him because he was one single man who was determined with us to make NNSL work. So from creditor to creditor, we were either rescheduling or paying up, from the little money that we earned here and there. So a lot of them trusted him and had hope in the future of NNSL. Now, some heavy debts we could not reschedule, like dry docking debts that, we don't even know how those debts came up. So in any case, we had hope that after rescheduling the debts, that the creditors will allow us, they'll pull back and give NNSL, a breathing space. Then I mentioned again that we were building we were acquiring new ships. We got a new one from Navimo again, under this that minister, Babatokwe. The ship that was worth maybe 26 million was given to us for 16 million as an inroad. So everybody was very happy. And that was one of the many such ships to come to replace the aging ships. So there was hope of, revitalizing NNSL. I had hope. Then, of course, I told the minister that in future, government requisitioning must stop. For instance, ECOMOG. We were going to ECOMOG carrying, troops, equipment, to and fro, costing NNSL, no kobo came from government. Such debts, they should be off. And even though he was a government man, I said, sir, in future, if government has to own a shipping line, please let them not take the controlling share. Let it be, some kind of arrangement where, maybe 1 or 10%, will be owned by government just to carry government name and the flag. So, this interference and all that repositioning and blah, blah kind of thing must stop. And he agreed with me. He agreed with me. So I saw that that was one way of making the company work. So yes, that was our vision.
Captain. Thank you for that question. We have to, I think we have to start rounding up, and I have put in the chat section a means for further communication, and you can also send an email to our center, and the proceedings will be on our center uploaded for people who want to watch it. Anybody who has questions now, I don't know, Joseph Jumbo, what is your, we don't have much time, Joseph Jumbo. Can you ask your question in 30 seconds, please, Joseph Jumbo? Unmute yourself. You just give you 30 seconds, please.
That they academically, materially, that they financially, Lord.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Afternoon. Please do quickly. We are short for time. Go ahead. Okay.
Yes, I am Joseph Jumbo, and I'm very happy to be in this meeting. I've been in the meeting from the beginning till now, and I've heard everything that has been said. In fact, I've learned a lot. But I want to ask my question from the angle of the lecture of Captain Sunday Umoren.
Yeah.
After his lecture, I really learned so much. But the question was asked by Captain Kingsley Akpan. And I want to attach my question. I want to draw my question out from what Captain Kingsley Akpan asked. I'm a cadet from Maritime Academy of Nigeria, who is still seeking for placement, sir. I've been to NIMASA some months ago to ask for a recommendation letter to companies. I've been struggling here in Lagos to get placements. And somebody in NIMASA, in the Maritime Labor Office, told me that NIMASA can no longer give a recommendation letter to companies because companies don't honor it. So there is nothing it can do for me. And I quietly walked away because I had nothing else to do. But I've heard today that NIMASA are training cadets. NIMASA train cadets and send them for placement. So what is that thing that has been put in place so that cadets are not being trained by NIMASA, who are being trained from other maritime colleges and institutions, can also get placements on board, also get adequate attention from shipping companies and other approved agencies? That is my question, sir. Thank you very much.
Captain, do you have a quick response? But I think you can
Yeah, I
discuss
think
offline, but you can just answer briefly and then.
well, let me just give him let me just take a second to respond to him. Yes, I can understand your predicaments, and I would just want to point out the fact that I'll still need to find out the current status, but I know as at the last I knew, NIMASA was giving out a recommendation letter to shipping companies. But what you need to know is that those companies, those vessels are not owned by NIMASA. NIMASA is not giving those companies any leverage, any sort of rebate for taking cadet. They only just recommend that, hey, I have seen this guy, he studied in one of our approved institutions, and it says, in fact, actually, you are supposed to tell NIMASA the companies that they should send the letters to. So the letter now will be a case of, yes, we attest to the fact that this guy is a cadet, give him a chance on board the vessel. So they are not under any compulsion to take anybody in. But of course, it's expected for them to support the cadet being given the opportunity. So I'll find out to see how the status are. Contact me and any other person I'm not in the NIMASA, but I'm an ex-NIMASA staff. I still work with them very closely. But yes, please don't give up. Go around the shipping companies, try as much as you can, and you never know. You know, one of your efforts could yield returns. You know.
Okay, thank you very much. And as I have also said, anybody who wants to reach any of our speakers, Prof. White, Captain Sunday Umoren, Prof. Aworawo, Donald Ibe, Dami Osinuga, anybody who wants to reach any of our presenters, you can always send a message to me or to the center, and we'll take you forward. And further developments, post-forum events, post-event forums, we are going to announce it, and we have your emails, and we're going to communicate with you. Thank you so very much. Please, a round of applause to all our speakers. They did very well, and may God bless you all. Thank you. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Okay. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye for now.
Thank you, sir.
Goodbye to all. See you next time.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, we're done.